I'm Joy Mason, your moderator for this important discussion on the relevance of higher ed. I'll start with introducing our panelists this afternoon, and I'll go in the order that I see everybody on the screen. So Geneva Taylor, would you introduce yourself?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
That's like a favorite phrase these days, right? My name is Geneva Taylor. I'm the owner and managing director of TELUS Executive Search Consultants Who Care.
Okay, thank you, Geneva. Dr. Ronald Rasheed.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Ronald Rasheed. I serve as president at the University of Southern Indiana.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bill Turner.
Good afternoon, I'm Bill Turner, Executive Director for Skillful Indiana and National Alliance Delivery. Good to be here.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Chancellor Allison Bell.
Good afternoon. I'm Allison Bell. I'm the Chancellor for WGU Indiana.
Okay, thank you. And then again, I'll be your moderator for today. I'm Joy Mason, founder of Optimist Business Solutions. So in addition to working with leaders on efficiency, effectiveness, and equity, I'm also on the alumni board for Butler University and also on the alumni advisory board for the College of Arts and Sciences for Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. So let's set the stage for our discussion today. COVID-19 laid bare what we already knew. The current system of higher education is apparently, according to some, losing its luster. Even before the pandemic, only half believed that a college education is very important. How will higher ed regain some of its past relevance and shift to serve an ever-shifting ecosystem of students, teachers, and workers? According to the Federal Reserve, the national student debt level in the fourth quarter of 2020 was $1.7 trillion, spread across 45 million borrowers, the highest level on record. Many students are not able to pursue higher ed due to cost constraints or earning potential after graduation. With that said, let's talk about the relevance of higher ed. So our first question today, I will direct to Chancellor Allison Bell. We're at a critical point where many are demanding accountability to demonstrate the connection between higher education and careers. What could that demonstration look like and how could it be verified?
Thanks, Joy. So this isn't a new challenge for higher ed. Employers have long stated that college grads don't have the skills needed to be successful in critical entry-level roles. Parents and students question the return on their investment in a college degree. As the cost of a college degree continues to rise and it becomes less and less accessible to most people, the pressure to demonstrate the value of that degree relative to cost increases. So it's a multifaceted issue for WGU as a model that addresses many of these concerns. It's not the only institution doing this, but it's one model. WGU offers and has always offered competency-based degree programs that are workforce relevant and offer credit to students upon demonstration of those competencies. The really powerful way to demonstrate the connection between higher ed and careers is through the creation and application of a universal skills language, though, which is a further sort of dissection of competencies. Connecting skills developed by completing a degree with the skills developed in training and through work experiences solves this problem of the connection. I suspect that the disconnect is not so much that students are being poorly prepared for the workforce due to like lack of necessary skills, but we, all of us, need to have a way to identify and communicate the skills effectively. For example, communication is a universally valued skill, but who's to say that my understanding of communication skills is the same as your understanding? And further, skills need to be contextualized in the work environment. So good communication skills for a project manager look different than good communication skills for a bedside care nurse. So while completing a relevant degree, students develop the needed communication skills likely, but maybe they don't know how to communicate that or even identify that for themselves. part of a larger organization working. It's the Open Skills Network, which includes 800 members, 350 partner organizations that are working to define contextualized skills and operationalize these universal skills in a universal skills language. The example, a concrete example of this, is a pilot project in Indiana called the Indiana Achievement Wallet that WGU Indiana, Skillful, IB Tech, the Goodwill Excel Center, and many healthcare employer partners are developing and piloting a tool that will allow learners to display these verified skills in an online environment, a wallet. And that wallet will help the learner compass to opportunities that their training and education has prepared them for, and it will help employers identify good candidates using these verified skills that are based on a universal understanding of what these skills are. So this is exciting work. It's one way that the connection between college degree and careers can be demonstrated and verified. There's much more work to be done, but I offer that as an example.
Thank you, Chancellor Allison. And you mentioned a couple of terms that may be new to our audience, and I jotted those down because I'll probably study those a little bit more after our panel, but universal skills language. And that makes perfect sense as you talk about trying to make sure that we contextualize the information that students are getting when they attend classes, because at the end of the day, what does it actually mean in the workplace? So that makes total sense, and making sure that the skills are verified. So thank you for sharing that. You've given us some new language ourselves that we need to look into further.
Thanks, Joyce.
Our next question I'd like to direct to Geneva Taylor. The data suggests that there are significant employment gaps in the manufacturing sector. How can we help manufacturing companies find and hire skilled workers? And where does a college degree fit or not fit in the manufacturing jobs landscape?
Oh, thank you, Joy. So my background, just to give some context of why this is important to me, I grew up kind of in the manufacturing field, and my clients are not candidates. My clients are companies who manufacture products and their supply chain. So medical device companies, aerospace companies, automotive companies, everyone is saying they need workers. And they need workers not necessarily always with a degree, but with some kind of skill set and some kind of further education. So I believe a higher education, actually a degreed education, does matter if you want, especially to get into a supervisory role, a management role, or have that track. But there's still a lot of jobs that are needed to be filled with highly skilled people that will show up, that will learn a skill, that will perfect their skill. So it's almost like a little bit of a trade. And a lot of people had this bad view of manufacturing, and it was kind of, frowned upon that it was dirty and nasty and everything, like you're going to get your hands dirty, you're going to be on your feet all day. It's not always like that. There are some highly skilled roles that are in high demand, like CNC machinists, CNC programmers. They don't necessarily require a full degree, but they do require you to have some technical skills. And there's some of these skills are I think, needed. There's a gap of, I've read a study that it was about 2 million jobs that will be a gap in the next few years for people in the manufacturing sector. So I think there's a balance of needing a college degree, especially if you want to get into higher level management. But on the other side of it, you don't have to necessarily go the college route. You need to get a skill. You need to learn how to work with others in a team, and you need to basically upskill yourself from just not having a high school education. And I think there's room for everyone in our country to have a position that's well-paying and meaningful. And I have a bunch of other ideas, but we don't have time for all of my ideas. But I think that to encourage students that if college is not for you now, it may be for you later, but you still need to get a skill. There's still more to learn, and everyone, even after they have a college education, needs to be continue their learning. It's not a stop, I'm done, and move on. It's a continuous journey in all of our learnings. So I hope I answered the question.
You did, Geneva. And I just want to check in on a stat that you mentioned and I thought was staggering. So I want to make sure that I heard it right. 2 million jobs. What was that stat again?
2 million manufacturing jobs. There's a gap, potential gap of 2 million manufacturing jobs. And it was a study from McKinsey, I believe, probably now 4 or 5 years old. But the expectation was that this gap is growing because there's just not the pipeline of individuals coming into manufacturing. And I can attest from talking to my clients, this is the area they have the gap. And there are well-paying jobs. They're not just warehouse jobs. These are skilled laborers, skilled people for manufacturing airplanes, skilled people for manufacturing airplane parts and medical goods, things that we need. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, we need that skill set in the US, not just overseas. Right. Not everything's going to come from China. And we need to have skill sets, and manufacturing companies still exist and jobs still exist in the United States.
Thank you, Geneva. So that number, I did hear that correctly. I just want to double check. And I can attest to manufacturing environments, what you said, Geneva, about maybe there is some preconceived notion in terms of what manufacturing environments look like. As I think about my days at Eli Lilly, now, of course, we're pharmaceutical, but the manufacturing environment, extremely clean. And again, when you say warehouse jobs, that might not sound appealing to individuals who are not familiar with warehouses, but our warehouses were exceptionally clean. So these aren't the dirty jobs that might come to mind when people think about manufacturing. Also, I do want to highlight, because this conversation about the relevance of higher ed, there may be differences of opinion, but I hope we can agree on what Geneva mentioned, and that is to be employable and relevant. Our community does need skill sets and some type of further education. So again, there may be a broad spectrum in terms of, is it higher ed? Should we be emphasizing that as much? What is the relevance or not? But the facts say that a skill set, I like the universal skills language, and some type of further education is needed. So thank you, Geneva, for your critique of what you see happening currently, specifically as it pertains to manufacturing. So our next question will be directed to Bill Turner. How do we direct those who may not have a degree on a specific path or roadmap to a meaningful and relevant career?
Thank you, Joy. So based on the first two speakers, I can tie a little bit of what we do into that. So on this call and in daily life, you hear about skill sets, you hear about you need a skill. Employers are saying, hey, I want to hire based on skills, et cetera. But a lot of times, and what's skillful, skills is in the name of my job title, Skillful Indiana. But one of the things I think that we try to do with our work is to try to help employers articulate what are those skills. To Allison's, Chancellor Bell's point a minute ago about, having, what does communication mean to you? Instead of just putting communication on your job description, try to explain what communication skills you're looking for that job. So we offer tools to employers to help them articulate what those skills are and try to, and this is going to sound kind of counterintuitive to what we're talking about today, but reduce the number of times you put a bachelor's degree on your job description if you don't need it. But if you do need a bachelor's degree or some higher form of education, go ahead and put that on the job description, but also list the skills, because not every electrical engineer that graduates from Purdue has the same skill set. They may have the same piece of paper, but their skill set may be different. And so you need to be able to articulate that. So we help employers articulate that. But on the flip side, how do I know as a student or a job seeker or somebody that's trying to figure out what path I take, whether it's educational, whether I go straight into the workforce, but we try to help career coaches, career counselors. We help train them to then pull that skill set or the skills that that person has that's sitting across the table from them. It could be somebody leaving high school, wanting to go to college. They're sitting down with their career counselor at Ivy Tech, WGU, wherever it is, and they're asked, or University of Southern Indiana, and they're asking, what skills do you have, or what do you like to do, and kind of help that student go down that career path as they matriculate through college or post-secondary. And then that way they're on a path to earn to get a degree or certificate that is based on what they are good at or what they like to do. And that changes the game when they get hired. The other piece of it is we provide tools to, I think it was Geneva mentioned, how do you know what path to go down? There are different jobs, whether it's manufacturing or healthcare. And a lot of times a counselor may not know that if I have a skill set that is around, work with my hands, I have great communication skills, et cetera, it can take me either into manufacturing, like I came from Allison Transmission as a prior life, go to Allison Transmission, or you could go to, Rolls-Royce, which has the airplane parts, or you could go into healthcare. Those same skills can move you within different locations or different job sets. And so the Rework America Alliance, which I'm a part of, we're bringing a tool that helps people understand that and can see it, and it gives you multiple paths. So the path is first figure out what skills you have and have somebody help work you through that, and then try to go down and get the training that's associated with where you want to go. I know in the past, and hopefully those that are RNs don't jump on me, but, nursing is a huge, we need nurses, right? But not everybody's cut out to be a nurse. And so people tend to chase what's really popular, or maybe the value of the dollars there. But sometimes it's, okay, what's my skill set? Should I follow that path? Or should I follow the path to manufacturing? Should I follow the path to IT, et cetera? So that's kind of what we try to do, and what we try to work on with Skillful. It gives a person a path to get them to the destination they're trying to reach.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And before we go to the next question, though, because I have to admit, I'm new to hearing about Skills Indiana. So what you shared is really helpful, not only for me, our panelists, but for those who are listening who may not be aware of your organization. But before we go to the next question, could you just clarify for us, again, for those who may not know about the services that Skillful Indiana provides, who is making that connection? Is it the student while still in college, or is it the person who has just graduated from high school? Is it the employer? What is the access point to leverage what you're able to provide from Skillful Indiana?
So that's a good point. It could be all of those. And what we try to do is, if you can focus on the skills and competencies, it doesn't matter if you're a high school student, you may be on the high school football, or you may be a cheerleader, or you may be volleyball, whatever. What skills are you learning being part of that team, right? And then whatever classes you're taking, are you good in math? Are you good in English? Where are you good? And follow those skills as you go into college. If you're deciding to go to college, sit down with your counselor, your advisor, find out, talk to them about that, and find a career path that matches that. And so we help provide that training to help those career counselors, whether you're in high school, college, if you're in the workforce, if somebody's trying to go back to school and get a different education, then how are those counselors, so with your work ones, if you're unemployed, you're trying to find a job. So we try to help train all those coaches, because it just depends on where you start, and then we help you get a path from there.
So it sounds like you will meet whoever where they're at currently. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, I think there may be a little.
And we are not a direct provider. We help train those that do work there. So I would not. Is it my internet?
I am not sure if it's your internet, but Thank you, Bill. We'll just go ahead. I don't know if we're having a little technical glitch, but that's all right. We'll keep going. So thank you, Bill. We appreciate all that you shared. And again, some of this information about the services from Skillful Indiana, I'm sure is new information. So we've got a new resource out there now, which is great. The next question we'll direct to Dr. Ron Rasheed. When we prepared for this panel, you suggested that we all pause and look at the demographic we are targeting as we consider alternatives to higher ed. If we discover that this demographic is primarily Black and Brown, what does that mean or imply from your perspective?
Wow, good morning, everybody. And this is such an honor to be with these esteemed panelists. Joy, thank you for the question. This is on my mind all the time. I'm always, posing a question to my students in particular about what is their passion? What is it that they want to do with their lives? Let me be clear. Geneva makes an amazing point. So does Bill with regard to, and also you with regard to the needs for manufacturing and skills. I concur. I think that there's honorable work out there for people to do. But the piece that I'm concerned about, though, is, how are we targeting these particular platforms and messages, to specific communities? Overwhelmingly, as we already know, we have Black and Brown children all across our nation who are less enthusiastic about education, about schooling. And it's not because they're not gifted, they're not because they're not able, or they're not intellectually apprised to what's necessary. It's quite often because we have provided them with a curriculum that is the antithesis of excitement and engagement and involvement. And so what I want to just pose is simply this. Real quickly, one example that I would provide is that as you talked about the debt for higher education, I think that we are all concerned about that. But let's be clear that when a young person secures a loan for an automobile, they secure this $35,000 to drive off that lot this afternoon, that vehicle depreciates immediately. When they secure that loan for education, to invest in themselves long-term, building not only themselves, but for generations to come. This is how I'm looking at this. This is what means so much to me. I'm a first-generation college attendee. I'm from the south side of Chicago. My mother and father did not go to college. I know for a fact, I will tell you that my experiences at Tuskegee University, my experiences at the University of Illinois transformed my life, opened doors beyond my imagination. And I sit here today as a university president because of those teachers, because of my community, because of my family, because of that investment, because of that non-negotiable direction about, college was not an option for me with regard to me finding my purpose, finding my passion. And so, listen, I will thread this needle respectfully all the time because, I believe in skill sets. I installed carpet when I was a college kid. It helped me get through college. And so I understand the significance of skills and advancing oneself through that particular platform. But I want to make sure that we are very careful and not targeting people saying that this is your only route. This is what you were born for. College is not for you because of your zip code, your race, your ethnicity, your gender, whatever the variable may be attached to your identity. I want to make sure that we're careful in making sure that people have choices and have autonomy and are seeking and maintaining dignity with their life work.
Thank you. I was just taking notes because you bring up some excellent points. And when we were preparing for the panel, I wanted to make sure we had this conversation because, again, with a lot of our audience in the ecosystem that InnoPower is trying to create is for Black and Brown.
Yes.
So we should not shy away from having what it might appear to be a sensitive or difficult conversation about how race plays into this conversation. And I was just taking notes here that it's a delicate balance, right, between the current job sectors and what is needed, but also looking at this from a systems perspective. And race, as we know, and I'm sure you know, always plays some type of role or factor when we're looking at systems and having these conversations. So thank you. I think this is very important to this discussion that we're having today.
Thank you.
Chancellor Allison, what are some of the barriers to higher ed and how we can remove or minimize barriers from a policy perspective?
Thanks, Joy. So in my experience, some of the barriers include cost, access, and competing priorities of learners. Those tend to be the biggest barriers, and remembering that my lens is the adult learner. That's who I currently am focused on, not exclusively, but mostly, and the type of learner that I've supported throughout my career. But the truth is, those barriers can apply to all learners, especially, except for the most privileged of learners. So, if your higher education opportunity is handed to you and supported, that's great. But you probably don't face these barriers, but that's just not the reality, I think, for more people. So regarding cost as a barrier, even in-state tuition at public universities is out of reach for many, if not most people. When it comes to access, not every student can manage to make it to a physical campus, and the traditional model where classes are held at a fixed time during the day or night is an impossibility for someone who has to work to support themselves at least, or maybe themselves and a family. So further, so maybe an online degree is the solution for them. Which it does solve a lot of access issues depending on the model of online learning, which they vary quite a bit in terms of their flexibility. But access to online degree requires that you have access to high-speed internet, which not everybody has access to high-speed internet or the equipment needed to be successful in an online learning environment. So multiple barriers to access there. And then in terms of balancing multiple priorities, this can just be the need to work in order to go to school. But it can also be caretaking, or it can be attending to basic needs. So when people have multiple priorities to attend to, it's been my experience that even if they have a strong desire and commitment to completing that degree, if they have a family member or caring for their children or keeping the job that provides the money that allows them to do that and completing their degree, what are they going to let go of? You're not going to stop being a mom. You're not going to quit your job. We don't have as a society sufficient resources to support people to make that choice and prioritize their education over those other things. So some policy work that's already happening, but we need more of, and that we need to all advocate for. We need state and federal funding programs like the one here in Indianapolis, Indy Achieves, which offers grants and aid based on need to all adults in Marion County for post-secondary training, for degree completion, and it includes wraparound services depending on the award given to support. So help with things like if childcare is an issue, or it's coaching, and as I understand it, coaching and mentoring. We should also take a critical look at requirements of scholarships and grant and aid programs that are offered by states and federal programs, because so often they're not inclusive of all learners. So they're very often sort of created and designed with the traditional learner in mind. I say traditional, but that term is not sufficient, because truly 2-year-old right out of college who's being supported, that's not the majority learner these days. But sometimes those scholarship programs will require on-campus involvement in order to keep that scholarship. Well, that's not a reality for many learners. They can't do it, and it's not what they're looking for out of college. So work on that so that those are more inclusive. State-based programs are available all over the place, and there are more of them now in the wake of the pandemic. But so often they focus just on short-term certifications, which I absolutely value, and I think they should be a part of it. But I think that those programs could be expanded to allow funding for bachelor's degree programs, particularly when those are designed to allow people to move through them flexibly and perhaps more quickly. I also think that we need to continue to support state and federal policy that supports the expansion of access to high-speed internet for everyone, and then more funding sources that create support for things beyond tuition, like living expenses, like wraparound services to help with barriers like childcare, transportation, mental health, stress management, all things that impact. And we shouldn't just expect that they can get that support without some sort of financial support in order to achieve that. So those are some of the barriers to access and some of the policies I think that can begin to address those issues.
Thank you so much. And as I was listening to your answer, as you know, I asked about policy, but I noticed a theme in all the different points that you mentioned, and that was inclusion. Yeah. So we're talking about policies that expand inclusion and access. I just love that because I was picking that up in, you know, all the points that you were providing, because so many times I believe, or at least my perspective, is that we hear about what individuals should do, right? Yeah. This is what individuals are supposed to. And anytime you say that word should, right, you're supposed to kind of go, ooh, because you're talking about what others should do based on your perspective. So we talk about the individuals. And then with many of you, we're talking about what institutions, like the institution of higher ed or manufacturing organizations. So institutions, organizations. And I love when we get into the conversation about policy, because that's about systems. And so many times the barriers are, yes, they lie with individuals, but many times those barriers lie within systems. And those are the things, if we can figure out how to change for the better, will have a huge impact and cover many individuals. So I don't want to lose sight of that policy part of the discussion and the impact that if we can really get in there and do the hard work of systems change, what kind of impact that could have to what we're really talking about today. Great conversation. So Geneva, I would like to come back to you as we get towards the end before we go back to everyone and allow you to just share your parting words. Geneva, how can we create systems to improve access and uptake of high wage opportunities? Examples might include implementation of apprenticeships, which I think are more common in different parts of the world and countries more so than what we find in use here in the US.
Yeah, and I think it can be done not just at very big companies, but small businesses as well. And I've had some thoughts about that. One of my clients is headquartered in Germany. And what they brought to the US, to their US site, is an apprentice program. And it's not just for their company, it's for the other companies of similar nature in their community, in their market. And they have a facility where they train high school students on different skill sets, especially machining. And once they go through this apprentice program, they can also get jobs at these other companies. So every company kind of helps in some way, either in the training or the actual support of the facility, providing trainers at their facility. And what they all win with this is a capable skill set of people once they've gone through the apprentice program. And they get these jobs right out of high school. And again, it's not to dissuade people from also wanting to go to college or doing college. Like Ron, I'm from the South Side of Chicago. And my parents, though, got their degrees when I got mine. I mean, they worked first. They raised a family. They went back to school. That whole other learning. I know we're talking a lot about a little bit more about the younger people and their route right out of high school. And what I am actually suggesting is there might be one route right out of high school because maybe you're not ready to have that investment yet in college. But to know anyone at any age can go back to school or you advance their education or advance their skill set, advance their training. You can make that decision. It's a personal decision. It's a family decision. When the timing might be right for you. And I think that companies who embrace that and not just look at younger people, but look at anyone that's advancing their skill set and bringing on apprenticeships, you know, having more openness, they're going to have the ability to fill more of their openings than others. I mean, I've seen the gamut. I've seen the folks that say, I want someone and I'm not naming companies' names, but they say, I want somebody with 10 years experience. What is that supposed to mean to me? So you want somebody in their 30s, right? I don't want anybody that has 30 years experience. I'm like, okay, that's me, that's at least me. So that, the companies have to realize that skill sets and capabilities, and people need to also realize skill sets and capabilities come in all ages, shapes, sizes, races, colors, whatever, sexes. I want to see more females in all kinds of roles. I want to see everyone in all kinds of roles. And I think the possibilities are there if, again, the infrastructure, not just big companies, if even small businesses can have that mindset to kind of be flexible. And one of the things that I had this bright idea, because I'm a small business and I think about this sometimes. I was like, it's great that I might get a PPP loan or EIDL loan or whatever, but it would be even better if I could have some funding specifically to train people. Give me money to specifically hire and train people in a skill job that they can make a living wage on. Give small businesses access to that. To me, there's opportunities there. It's not always just the big companies creating jobs. There's more small businesses in this country than big businesses anyway. Help the small businesses help create the jobs in their community, because they will hire people that are near them. They will hire people in their community. And I think that opportunities exist. Talk about barriers. There's opportunities to reduce barriers if they just support the small businesses in the communities that can hire the people in the same communities. So that's another aspect. I'm not sure. That's another way to increase access, I guess you could say. Access to opportunities is by helping the small businesses.
Excellent point, Geneva. And I don't have the stat in front of me. I used to know it, but I believe it's over 95% of employers are small businesses. So it's entities like yours and myself. So that's an excellent point. And I have one question that is a little off track. Why are the folks from South Side of Chicago so proud? They always announce it. I'm from the South.
White Sox.
I have to just point that out. You South Side of Chicago folks are very proud people. I see Dr. Rasheed grinning too. So, okay. What I'd like to do is just, because we do still have some time and we have very structured questions, so we could just make sure that we address some very specific points. But now let's just go across the screen. And if you'd like to emphasize some particular points, again, that are relevant to this discussion and apparently the controversy, or I should say range of opinions regarding the relevance of higher ed, please by all means share. I know Geneva had some of her novel ideas and your philosophies or examples. Just go ahead and leverage and maximize your last 2 minutes. If we could start with Dr. Ronald Rasheed, please.
Thank you. And Chicagoans on the South Side are proud people. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed.
This is a great conversation. Joy, can I just emphasize one other thing? I meant what I said earlier, just really kind of balancing this conversation with respect, because I believe that people should be able to maintain dignity in their work. I remember when I was a kid, I was in college and I came home every summer and I was a janitor. And it was the first time in my life where I became invisible to the audience. I didn't matter to people, and I was wanting to wave and tell them that I wanted to do something, beyond this, but people looked down at me. It really gave me an opportunity to really humble myself and understand that we should pay attention to all occupations, that everyone who is working to sustain their lives and sustain their families deserve respect, deserve civility and uplift. And so Geneva's correct. Whatever we can do to invest in people, I believe in. And also this notion of having another season, to attend higher ed later on, is powerful. It's real. It's relevant. And so I want to support that as well. The other thing I want to maybe give you something else to consider is that quite often communities of color and even majority group communities that are underserved, really grow up in many ways with this mentality of becoming a consumer as opposed to becoming a producer. And so, I want to shift this narrative so we can understand that there's power in thinking. There's power in learning. There's power in generating a relationship with an amazing teacher that can open doors and see something special in you. And so I know this for a fact that I had amazing people that told me I could do, that I could achieve. Okay. And I will tell you that as strong as my parents were in my life, I don't know that I had all the confidence necessary to find success. And so I want to encourage us to really kind of think about ways in which we can partner with business and higher ed. I think that there's an amazing synergy between the two that can open doors and access for people beyond our imagination. Last but not least, Joy, understand this right here. There's talent everywhere. What we lack is opportunity. This is what we lack. There is so much talent. There are so many answers to questions and solutions right in our backyard among people that we overlook every day who are virtually invisible. And so I tell my colleagues on this screen, I send you all love and respect. I want to partner with you. I appreciate your work. I respect your work. And I'm thankful that I'm able to speak to this panel as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Chancellor Allison Bell.
Thank you, Joy. It's funny, Dr. Rasheed, I'm just thinking what I would say in my 2 minutes was I was going to start with there's no lack of talent. And then you said it. And I think our focus needs to be on how do we create more pathways to that opportunity. I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it's a focus on skills versus focus on the value of the total experience of higher education. I'm all in when it comes to the value of a degree. I think I think the magic happens, I agree, in working together. And so if someone starts down the pathway of a degree and sort of the skilled workforce, I guess we could call it that, though I think that's a bit of a misnomer. But let's say I'm thinking about the work that we're starting to do with supporting coal workers. So that industry is dying, and there are people who that's all they've ever known. And there are all kinds of supporting, careers around that industry. Those workers have skills that could translate to degree pathways, to other fields, but it starts with skills that can connect people to opportunity, no matter where they began. And so in my mind, it is the connection of skills to your education, and that the skills include the skills to have those critical conversations with people, to be challenged, to network, to connect, all of the things. It's not just basic skill. A yes and mentality of focus on skills, focus on the value of higher education, and not be afraid to make connections between all of it, because that's where we will increase the opportunities and increase the pathways to opportunity so that no talent is wasted.
Exactly. Thank you. Mr. Bill Turner.
So let me go back to what President Rasheed said a minute ago about, the support he had along the way, people, encouraging him to complete. I'm sure most of us on the call had that same encouragement. But when we look at, and one of the reasons that I feel so passionate about the work that Skillful's doing is there are so many people out there that don't have that encouragement or that guidance. And so what we try to do is help, instill some of that ability into the career coaches or the counselors that they work with, because they may be in a community. And Geneva, there may be an employer in that community that could hire them, but they don't see themselves in those particular roles or in those jobs, and they don't think they have the ability to get there. And I think being, I'm getting a little deeper and away from the relevant education, but I think there's to the point about the systems and policies and everything else, there's so many barriers. I can't afford to go back to school and work at the same time if I'm already out of school. Nobody in my family's gone to college or gone on to other job or other education. So why should I? I'll just go get the job I can get and work with it. So I think one of the things that we try to do with the Rework America Alliance, which is a national group of folks that we've brought together, is to try to bring, and I think Allison said it, and so did Ronald, how do you bring people, the same like-minded folks, to the table? So we try to make sure that employers are at the table, education providers are at the table, the worker serving organizations are at the table, state leadership is at the table, because state leadership can affect policy, right? Local governments are at the table, because we need the one language that we can talk about. And as you know, I defer to my colleagues at WGU, because they do have a skills language that we're trying to emulate, so that when you say a job needs this particular skill, everybody at the table understands that, or at least has some idea, and then you can articulate that with the people that are looking to move forward. So I think it's a little bit of what everybody's saying, but we have to be, you know, I've done this work in workforce development for some years, member of the Employee Indie Board for some years, and some other workforce councils, and it's always about getting people to talk similar language. Instead of pointing fingers, hey, it's the employer not telling us what, oh, it's the educators, you guys can't get the right people out the door, and et cetera. We need to talk together. And I think the bottom line is, if we can focus on the folks that we really are trying to help and see what they need and how we can help them move, because not everybody has that mentor or that family that's really, you know, out there supporting. I have to admit, I had the same thing, and you know, I've done some things that I didn't think I'd do, but to what President Rasheed said, you know, I thought every job I had growing up, because of my family values, was that was the most important job. I had to do the best I could in that job. But that's not the case, and we have to keep that in mind as we try to help people move, whether it's education or not. You know, if we go straight into workforce, how can we help them do that? And we're trying to do that with the help of others, with the Rework America Alliance and Skillful. So I just want to make sure we don't forget the folks that we're trying to help. They don't know what they don't know yet. So I want to keep that in mind.
Thank you, Bill. Geneva, your last comments?
Yes, well, I am just so fortunate to be with this panel. I feel like I was listening in on the previous panel, and someone said, you don't want to be the smartest one in the room. And I know I'm not. So it's just wonderful to be with so many smart people and to have new network, you know, and I do believe we can partner and work together going forward. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize, though, you know, my whole opinion, my mindset has changed since I started my business. So I'm the product of a teacher and an engineer. And I told you guys that they went back to school and they were continuing their education as I was in elementary school and high school and college, and they finally finished. You know, my mom graduated with her bachelor's degree when I graduated with my bachelor's degree. My dad missed it by 1 year. He had an associate's degree, but he finished his bachelor's degree the year later. And so I was always of that mindset that everyone needs to go to college, especially people of color. That's the only way you're going to advance. But now that I've owned my business and I've been like outside of my corporate, you know, like mindset, you know, of that programming, is that I see people of all types, of all skill sets. I have candidates, I have clients, and they're saying, we need to have people like this. And not everybody I've talked to as candidates have college degrees, but they have great skill sets. But I might not be able to market them to certain clients because they want a bachelor's degree, not even an associate's degree. So I see it both ways, but I do also know that a lot of my clients still need people that have skills. I mean, I'm even talking about the small business that has a HVAC business or plumbing business. Robots and automation, I will not let a robot come in to my house and fix my air conditioner or my plumbing. So there are certain skill sets, electricians, you know, there are certain skill sets and trades that exist. And I don't care. I always felt like regardless of whatever I did, I was going to stay productive. So when I left corporate America, I was going to stay productive. I was thinking about all kinds of stuff. Maybe I'll become an electrician. I'm an electrical engineer. I can figure that out, you know. So I just want people to know, my ending comments is really like, any opportunity is important. Any opportunity, any kind of skill is possible. And you just need to ask questions, ask for help. Ask your universities, ask your college counselors at school. Don't let no deter you. Don't let somebody else's opinion deter you from following a dream, whatever that is, and explore. explore opportunities. If something, you don't like math, you don't have to be an engineer, but maybe you want to do something else, and you actually find out that math isn't so horrible. So there's other ways and alternate ways of learning that can open doors to new opportunities for people. So my thing is, everybody is needed, everybody is possible. Anything is an opportunity if you want it to be.
Thank you, Geneva. I appreciate your comments, and thank you for sharing that story about your parents, because too often times we keep the professional business life over here, and then our personal stories and journeys over here. So just like Dr. Rasheed shared, and I have to admit, hearing anyone say that I felt or feel invisible is heartbreaking. And I don't think any of us want that for anyone, no matter where you come from. But again, we only get to, it's when we share our stories that sometimes we can go ahead and get vulnerable. It's not always a business professional type communication. Sometimes we need to get vulnerable to get down to some of the heart of the issues, because some of these issues are issues of the heart, right? Not just about policy, and it's how we feel in our hearts about the value of people and placing different sets of values on people depending on their gender or their zip code and their race. So thank you very much for sharing your journey and your stories. So I just jotted down a couple of words, and I'm not going to strain myself on trying to knit them together nicely. But as we wrap up, I'll just share with you some different phrases that I captured, because a lot of times when we're discussing issues where there's a continuum or a range, a lot of times there are some things that we can all agree on. And here's what I captured. Skills are important. We need to make sure our citizens are furthering their education in some way, right? It may look different in different ways, but further education is needed when you look at the jobs in the job market. The traditional model doesn't work for everyone. Now, that doesn't mean don't go to higher ed. It just may mean we need to look at more inclusive policies, removing barriers. But we do need to acknowledge that the traditional setup isn't always working for those who need it the most. Options are needed. That's what I heard from Chancellor Bell. Barriers exist. We need supports and services. We need systems change. That's my big one. And that systems change is inclusive policy. I heard one of you say it doesn't have to be either or. I think that's interesting that we do in our society. It's either this or that. You're on the right or the left. It's higher ed or no higher ed. And it doesn't have to be that way. We want to make sure everybody knows that everybody has talent, right? Nobody's excluded. Everybody has talent. Solutions are in our backyard. I think Dr. Rasheed said that. It's not just about what individuals need to do, institutions, organizations, but also as a system, what we need to do. And manufacturing has significant needs that can be filled with those with a skill and different levels of education. So some excellent points. And I want to leave on this, because this is a humanity discussion too. Again, we don't want to forget we're talking about people. And I just love in every conversation with Dr. Rasheed, he talks about dignity and respect. And that is just critical as we're talking about our community and how to meet their needs. And last but not least, because I think we're just about done with about 30 seconds left, I want to make sure we recognize those who all live on the south side of Chicago. So we'll so I just want to end on that note to give a shout out to the South Siders of Chicago. But all kidding aside, excellent conversation. And we do hope that the content provided value to all those who are listening. And we are just so honored by the presence of Geneva Taylor, Bill Turner, Chancellor Allison Bell, and Dr. Ronald Rasheed. Thank you. And without further ado, we are going to transition to the African American in Education Awards that's coming up next. And our mistress of ceremonies is Katira Winfrey. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.